Hello, in this After Effects tutorial we are going to recreate this incredible scene from a MagnatesMedia video, but in my style. In addition, I am going to teach you how to generate images with artificial intelligence in 2K and 4K, and then prepare them in Photoshop and animate everything in After Effects. Here, I give you an example of what we are going to learn.
Despite Matteo's struggle to hold on to fragments of his life, the only thing that remained immune to oblivion was an old, worn photograph of Anna. Although life separated them, the memory of her still remains intact in his mind and heart.
By the way, if you like documentary-style editing, my course is now available. Although it's not just an editing course in which I tell you how to animate a sequence in After Effects and that's it, but I show you the whole procedure I followed to create this animation. From the initial idea to the final render, going through each and every phase of the creative process. I leave the link in the description in case you want to take a look at it.
Okay, well, to start making this animation, we are going to need 3 images, and we are going to generate them with artificial intelligence. There are many pages where you can do it, but I like this one called Free Pick AI. So I'm going to enter this website and I'm going to generate it here. Are you going to ask us to register? The easiest thing is to do it with the Google account. And one thing I want to talk to you about before we start is about this 20. This means that with the free plan we can generate 20 images per day. But if you are going to make a lot of videos and you are going to need images in 2K or 4K with this, you are not going to have anything. Since an image in 2K, I think they are 72 credits what it costs. So what I recommend to you, that this video is not sponsored or anything, is that you get a payment plan that they set you for $5 a month, which is nothing. We have to generate 84,000 images a year, which is amazing. And on top of that, we are not going to have any problem if we want them in 2K or 4K. Then there are other more advanced plans, 10 out of 22, that here you can generate more than 500,000 images a year. But hey, I think this 5 is more than enough. Now I am in my payment account and I still have more than 66,000 credits left, and I have been generating images in 2K and 4K all summer. Well, now I am going to show you the prompts that I have used to generate the images in the tutorial. An old man looking down. In his hands, you get an old photo worn by time. The photo is vertical. You can't see anything in the photo, just the texture of the background. Behind you can see an ancient town from the 60s. Because with Ctrl+C, we copy it. And here in the translator, I use this one that I like a lot. With Ctrl+V, we paste it. And now this prompt that we have in English. Here in this icon, we copy it. We come to Free Pick. And here in this dialog box with Ctrl+V, we paste it. And before giving it to create, we are going to see these options very quickly. Here we can make it in square size, 1 by 1, in 9/16 for story shorts. I am going to do it in 16:9. The style, all of you who have a photo, illustration like this, cyberpunk, pencil style. I am going to choose this one called Dark the Color because I am going to leave this as it comes by default, but you can choose anyone. I'm still going to leave the camera position as it comes by default, and here the lighting. Well, I'm going to choose a dramatic type of light. Now, when we have already chosen all the settings, we can now let you create. We wait a few seconds, and here it has already generated 4 different images for us. If we don't like any of them, we charge more. What happens? Look, 66480, and every time we give it to him, he charges us 4 credits. So you can take it into account. And well, any of these could be useful for the tutorial. I think this one could do just fine. When you are happy with the image you want, you can click this download icon here if it downloads you automatically. Or in this one here, you can convert it to 4K or 2K. The 4K does not leave the option of I have lived. It has to be the none, but the 2K does. This is trying until you find a result that you like. I'm not going to convert it to 4K because I already have that image here. Let's see where it is here. I have it in 4K. This is the one I'm going to use. In the first scene of the tutorial, the second prom, well, this one here, the picture shows 2 hands holding an old vertical photo with frayed edges. In the background, you can see an ancient town with control. See, we copy it and come to the translator. We pasted it, and now we copied this prom and we came back to free pics. Go back, image generator, and here with Ctrl V, we paste the new prom, and we are going to leave all the settings as they are. And well, interesting things are starting to appear here. For example, this one can be worth this one too. If we don't like any, we charge it more, and it generates 4 new ones for us. Notice how cool this one here looks with such a greenish background. Look at this one. This one can serve us perfectly. Even this one. Well, when you find one that you like, this one is also cool that you can see the sky here. Like that orange. Well, when you find the one you like, we do the same thing as before, or we give it to download an image that is automatically downloaded to us, or in this icon we make it 4K or 2K. If we want it in 2K, we give it to upscale, and that's it. It will automatically be converted to 2K. In fact, I'm going to do it so you can see it. Here it tells us that we can close the page and come back later, but it only takes a few seconds, so I'm going to wait. Okay, perfect. Notice how cool the image looks. What detail in the hands. They seem hyper-realistic. And, well, here we have a background of a town like that, with this yellowish and blurred sky. The truth is that the image is very cool. Then we would crop this in Photoshop, and here we would put the scene we saw in the tutorial animation. Okay, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We'll see about that later. The other prom is this one right here. In the image, you see a beautiful young-looking woman, standing on the grass, looking full body, wearing classic clothes from the 61s, vintage hairstyle. Look at the camera and smile. Behind her is the field and a small barn. Ctrl C, we copy it, and here in the translator, with Ctrl V, we paste it. And now this prom, just as we have done before. We copy it, and we come to FreeP image generator. We delete this one, and with Ctrl V, we paste the new one. And here, well, if you want, you can change some styles. I'm going to try to see what it looks like this. Well, but I do want to change the size of this photo here from widescreen. I'm going to change to social story. so that I can do it vertically and give it back to create. Look at how many cool images. That is exactly what we have put on him at the prompt. If you want, you can continue writing. For example, that the sky looks blue already, every one that lets his imagination fly. If we don't like any, we give it back to load more. When we already have one that we like, we give this icon to download it with these dimensions. Of 768 by 1344, which is not such a bad resolution either. I want it in 2K or 4K, so I give this icon. And if I want it in 4K, I have to deactivate, live and choose no. Now if I want it in 2K, yes, I can do it in vivid. We give it to upscale, we wait a few seconds, and that's it. I'm not going to do it because I already have that image of the girl and the barn here, and give you the dimensions here, which is 2K in height, but then we have to fill in the width in Photoshop with the generative fill, and that's how the 3 images in the tutorial were generated. Okay, well, we now come to Photoshop, and here we have to fix the images that we are going to use in the tutorial. I am going to explain the process with 1, but it is identical in the 3. I'm going to explain it with this one that I think is the most difficult to prepare. Here we give OK, and now here in Photoshop, there are many ways to crop an image. I'm going to start with the Tool, Object Selection. I'm going to click here. And if you notice that the pink edges are on, those that the back part of the photograph has selected for me, I click, and there we have it. Now in this layer, we are going to click on this icon, and we are going to create a layer mask. Now with Ctrl J, we're going to double. And we remove the layer mask from this one down here, and we hit this one for the moment. Now with the pen tool, we are going to continue cropping the character. On this occasion, we are going to cut out the hands, and we are going to separate them from the body, and then animate them separately in After Effects and create the parallax effect that looks very cool. So we are going to start cropping, because more or less here, the cropping does not have to be perfect, but obviously the better it is, the better it will be seen later in the animation. Here, when we have closed the cropping, we right-click and make a selection, and we are going to set the fade radius to 0. We give OK, and again, we have to create a mask for this layer by clicking on this perfect icon. Now what happens? We have to re-reveal all these parts where the background is seen. So we select this layer mask, and with the brush and the white color, we are going to paint like this, but without going too far. Because if we are not going to re-reveal the background of the image more or less there, and this one we will still paint here. So carefully, okay, perfect. And here's a part that we also have to cut out. We are going to do this one that is seen here between the fingers with another tool called a polygonal loop. We click here, around there more or less. Okay, again with the brush tool and the color black, And being on the mask, we are going to paint this area with control of deselect. And now with Control J, we are going to duplicate this layer again, and the one below. We remove the cape mask, and now we have to trim this hand. But the process is identical to this one. We're going to do it with the pen tool, and I'm going to start here more or less right here. When we close the layout, right-click to make selection and leave the fade at 0. We give OK, and again, by clicking on this icon, we create a layer mask. Okay? And this borders here the same as before, with the selected layer mask, brush, and black color. Well, we're going to paint not the color black, right? Sorry, the white color, because we are going to paint these areas here and there without going too far. As I said before, because if not, we are going to redevelop the image and we only want to reveal these areas. Okay, perfect. There it is again with Control J. We duplicate this layer, we hide this one for the moment, and these 3 right-click combine layers, and this one is going to be called Hands and Photo, okay? And this one down here, with right-click, we delete the layer mask. And we have the original image again. Now we're going to do the following, like this layer, then we're going to animate it in After Effects. We don't want him seen. Down here again. So with the Control key pressed, we are going to click on this image and come to the Modify Expand selection. And here we are going to put a value, for example, of 10 pixels. We give OK, and now to this layer down here, with this selection made, if we want we can hide it, and we are going to make a layer mask for it by clicking on this icon. I'm going to do Ctrl Z. What we have to do is reverse the selection. We can do it from here. Select invert or capital Ctrl plus I. Okay, now yes, we can create a cape mask for him. There it is, perfect. Now what I want is to fill in this whole area, and here we are going to put Photoshop to the test. We're going to choose the loop tool, and we're going to select this whole area out there. It can work out there without getting out, okay? And now, with this selection made, we are going to give general generative filling. Let's see what Photoshop surprises us with. Let's see if it is capable of filling in this part where you can't see this man's face, his jacket, his clothes, and all that. Well, the truth is that he has done quite well. Here we have 3 variants. If we don't like any, we can give it to generate again. But I believe that with this one here, it can be useful for us. And to remove these hands, we can make a selection like this again and give it to generative fill again. We wait a few seconds, and that's it. There it is, perfect. Now these layers, these 3 right-click, we are going to combine them. Well, before combining them, we are going to do the following. This one down here with Ctrl J, we duplicate it, and for now we deactivate it. Now yes, these 3 right-click combine layers. And on one side we have the Lord and the background, and on the other hand, the hands with the photograph. Okay, perfect. Now we have to separate this gentleman from the background. And I am going to do the trimming with the pen tool. The process is a little slower, but the trimming is much cleaner, and I personally like doing it more with this tool. Let's start here. More or less we can zoom. Let's not be afraid of the pixels out there and nothing. We're going to go around the Lord. When we have closed the cropping, right-click, make selection, and here, if we want, well, we can put a fade of 0.5 there, or K, and now on this layer, the same as before, we have to make a layer mask in this perfect icon. That's great. So on one side, we have the Lord, on the other, our hands with the photograph. And now what we need is the bottom. So with a right click, I am going to remove the layer mask from this one below, with which we have the original image. I'm going to select the loop tool and I'm going to make this outline like this, so a little by eye. Well, if there is any area that we want to add to the selection, for example here, where you can see the ear a little with the capital key, one more sign appears there, well, we can add this part there, okay? Now again, we are going to give fill, generative generate, and we are going to see if Photoshop is capable of removing this man. And merge the image with this town that you see here in the background. Well, this is great. Here we have three options, and any of the three can serve us. If you don't like any, you can generate it again as many times as you want. I think I'm going to keep this one because, as I say, all three work perfectly now. We select these two layers. Right, click Combine Layers. This is going to be the background. This one here, we have to apply the layer mask. And this one is going to be called Sir. This one up here, well, hands and photo. So on the one hand, we have the hands and the photo of the Lord. And on the other hand, the bottom layer. Well, this process that we just did separates some images from others and fill in empty spaces that didn't exist. We have to repeat it with all the images that we are going to use in the project, with all the images that require it. Here in After Effects, we are going to come to File and we are going to import the files. First, this is called Frame Grunge and Texture, and I'm going to put them into a file folder again. Import, and now I'm going to bring these from Photoshop, but one in one. First, this one called Mr. Looking at Photo as a composition and editable layer style, and to have this well organized from the beginning, I am going to create a couple of folders, one for the files and another for the compositions, and I am going to save this one in your folder. And this one that contains the Photoshop layers in place. Okay, perfect. Let's double click and let's start with this composition. We come to the adjustments, and if you want, you can do animation in 4K since the resolution of the images is very high. But for this tutorial, I'm going to do it from 1920 to 1080 to 30 frames. And with 20 seconds, I have enough. Now with a right click, I am going to create a null object, and I am going to link these layers to it with the S key. I am going to reduce the scale more or less until adjusting the layers here to the dimensions of the work table. I am going to put 37. As I say other times, I put these values because after having been doing some tests, they are the ones that have worked best for me. Is this 0 worth it? If we want, we can eliminate it, and we have to convert these layers to 3D. If the cube icon appears F4 and activating two views, I will see better what I am doing. I have this viewfinder here in left view, and here I can turn the background transparency on and off. I'm going to leave it like this in black. And I'm going to send the background layer back. Pi key. Here I am going to put a value of 2000 pixels in Z, and I am going to move the hands and photo layer to the front. Pi key here, I'm going to put -700. Okay? Now right click, I'm going to create a camera. And this is going to be 35 min Iraia, not again. New right clip, null object. We also converted it to 3D and attached the camera to it. And before starting with the animation, I am going to adjust the scale to these layers. The one in the background, I am going to set to 80%. And the one with hands and photos, because I am going to make it a little smaller. So I key here. I am going to put a value of 23. And if we now activate Custom View 1, here we can see the 3 separate layers on the Z-axis. With this, we are going to create a very cool parallax animation. If you want to reset the Custom View 1, you have to click on this option. We can now put the camera active, and now we select the null KPI. We mark a keyframe in the position, and here in the second 8, we are going to mark another. Now here in the first one, we are going to do a small animation. Here we are going to move all the elements up. I'm going to put a value of 600 in YY now. In Z, I'm going to do a little zoom. I'm going to put it here. 300. And these two keyframes, with F9 we smooth them and leave the curve as it is. Here we can now see the parallax effect. What happens? We are also going to do a small animation. Here the hands layer and photo key, P, we mark a keyframe, and here in the second 4, we mark another. And here, in the first one, we are going to move them a little bit down. We also put a value of 600 pixels on the Y-axis. And this first keyframe with F9, we smooth it. But this one here, we leave it linear, because then right here at this point, we are going to splice with the next scene, and thus, we are going to give continuity to the animation. Then later, we will see better. Okay, perfect. If we want, we can now activate motion blur on these 3 layers, and we come back to the File Import Compositions folder. And now we are going to bring what is called Hands and Old Photo as composition and layer style editable. And this folder that contains the Photoshop files to its site, and we're going to get into this composition. We also come to the adjustments, and we are going to make it from 1920 to 1080. We leave everything as it is. And we also have to scale these layers here in the dimensions of the work table. Right-click New Null Object. We attach them to it, S key. Just like before, we are going to set a value of 37, and we can now eliminate it. We have to convert them to 3D. And this layer here, that is called shadow, finger, that is this shadow that you see here. Okay, well, we have to connect it to hands and photo. Now the bottom layer, which is this town that you see here, P key, and we're gonna send it back. We are going to set a value of 2500, and we are going to increase the scale a little. We are going to leave it at 92. Now with right click, we are going to create another camera, the same as before, 35 millibit. Again, right click, new null object. This one we also converted to 3D, and the camera, we connected her to him. And if this composition, the animation of the hands, ends here in the second 4, then the next scene is going to splice right there. We put here in this part of the 4P key in the 0, and we mark a keyframe, and from the 4 we are going to come to the 8, and right there we mark another. Now here in this first one we are going to do a small animation. We do a little zoom, we put a value of 200 in Z, and here we are going to move it down. We put 430 in EN. And this keyframe we leave it linear. And this with F9 we smooth it. And to better see what I mean by giving it continuity, well, we are going to put ourselves here in the compositions folder, and we are going to create a new one that is going to be called montage. We leave everything as it is, and here we can now bring that of the Lord looking at the photo and hands and old photo. Okay, well, right on the second 4. That's where we're going to cut this composition. Let's preview it to see what it looks like. Okay, perfect. Well, this is what I mean by giving it continuity, that here is the man raising his hands with the photograph, and the next scene you can still see how he is moving upwards. But here in this composition we are going to put an effect on the background called tone and saturation. This is the master hoe. I'm going to put it at -10 there. I'm going to raise the master saturation to 30. And the master lines, well, I'm going to put it at more or less -5. Look at the before and after. With this, what we have done has been to give greener tones to the bottom part. And so this way, because these two scenes have a very similar colorization. Okay, perfect. Something else we can do, look at this hand that's a little bit higher than this one. Look there, because we are going to enter this composition. On the cape, hands, and photo right click. We come to transform and flip it horizontally. Okay, and this hand that's a little bit higher than this, well, in the next scene, we continue to give that continuity to the animation, which are small details that then make our animation look much more professional. Okay, well, let's continue with animation in this composition. We put ourselves here in this last keyframe. We double the null with key Control U by clicking on the clock. We delete the existing ones and mark a new 1, and from 8 we are going to come to 11. and it is important to connect the previous 0 to the new value. And now here we are going to zoom. And the story is passing with the camera through photography. We're going to lower it a little bit there. We keep zooming in. Well, here in Y, I'm going to put a value of 400, and here in Z, we're going to put 3200. The last scene should already be seen here. We're still watching. The cape is at the bottom called Town, but we are going to fix this right now. Okay, there it is, perfect. Well, we get to this point, and we are going to select the rectangle tool. The color is indifferent, whichever you want. And now we are going to make a shape, covering this entire part of the photograph in which nothing is seen, but without going beyond the edges, we have to do it more or less there. Okay, now I am also going to change the name of this layer. This is going to be called matte. And I am also going to change the color to differentiate it well. And at this point, we convert it to 3D. Now, we are going to put this save layer above the layer called Town. Okay, and if the follow-up mates with F4 appear, we deploy them. Now we have to make this layer alpha matte of this solid worth what happens. We have to reverse the alpha matte. We click on this icon, and there it is, perfect. With this, we are going to create the transition to the next scene. Here you can still see the background, but that's for this. Look here when the camera goes through these two layers here. When it goes through these two. Because what the camera sees is this layer here, which is the bottom one. If I move a little bit forward, there it is moving the bottom layer. So a little bit before the camera passes through these two layers. More or less there. Well, this matte one and this Town one, we are going to cut. Right there, we come to Edit Split Layer, or Ctrl-Shift+D. And these two parts we eliminated. Okay, perfect. Now we smooth these two keyframes with F9, and this one here, we are going to move a little to the right, more or less there. And without moving the head of this part, we are going to mark another keyframe. And we can now put this where we want, and we are going to put it here in the second 15, which is where the animation will end. We select the three with F9, we smooth them, and we are going to give this shape to the curve. We double click on this node, activate the continuous box, and set the influence to 65. We give OK. And now this handler here, not this one, we are going to move it up a little bit to create this organic descent. Okay, in this one, we do the same thing, double click, and we set the influence to 65%. And now, the animation, instead of standing still at this point, because it's still going to be moving forward, but slower and slower. What happens now is not visible at all, because we have to prepare the last scene. We come here to Project, to the File Import Compositions folder, and now we are going to bring this file called Girl Layers, just like composition and editable layer style. We give it to OK, and it is that contains the Photoshop layers to its side, and we are going to enter to this composition. We come to the settings and we are going to do it from 1920 to 1080. Okay, we leave everything as it is. With right click, I'm going to create a null, and I'm going to associate these two layers to it. Psi key, and here I'm going to set the scale to 60%. And we can now eliminate the null. We have to convert the layers to 3D. And this one at the bottom, well, we are going to send it back. We are going to put a value of 2000 pixels here. And with the S key, we are going to scale it quite a bit. For example, to 140%. And I am also going to move it a little to the right, so that these houses here can be seen well. By key here, I'm going to put it in X1175. Okay, and I'm going to move the girl's cape down a little bit. Pi key in Greek Y, I'm going to give it a perfect value of 605. We come back to the composition, hands and old photo. And here in this last keyframe, we are going to bring the Chica layers composition. We're going to put it down here. We convert it to 3D. And now, with Control Home, we center it there in Vista. Whatever happens, we have to make some adjustments, for example, so that it doesn't look so flat. Look at what the composition looks like, so that you can see the depth that we have just given to the background. We have to activate the raster icon continuously. Okay, perfect. Now we are going to increase the scale quite a bit. I'm going to put it at 175%. I display the position, and I am going to send it a little further towards the bottom. I'm going to put a value of 3500 and here on the axis. And while I'm going to move it down a little bit, I'm going to put 495 pixels. In this first part looks perfect there. I don't want the parallax effect to be seen with the photograph, but for it to be a static image. But hey, we're going to do that now. Then what I want to do now is fix some details here. For example, here the girl. Look there. That you can't see his legs all the way down? Well, we are going to put the CC Repetal effect on the background layer as well, because here in this part there are still some background pixels to be seen. Instead of putting the CC Repetal effect, what I'm going to do is escalate it a little more, and that way you don't need to put it into effect. I think that by escalating it to 150, we solve it. Is it worth the girl's cape? Yes, in this part of here, to complete this space that was emptied, although later we are going to put a vignette and some effects, and this is not even going to be noticed. Here's the composition of the girl. We put the CCRP tail effect on it, and we are going to expand the pixels downwards. 1.200, 300 to spare. And again, we changed it to a fall. And although it is not perfect, but hey, it can be worth it for us. Let's preview everything, see what it looks like. As I said before, here I do not want the parallax effect to be seen in the photo, but rather for it to be a static image. So we're going to go into composition, and right here at this point at the second 8, which is when this animation, the zoom animation, begins. Well, right there in that part I'm going to activate full quality. Well, there are several ways to do this, but I'm going to do it the following way. I'm going to stay alone with this composition, activating this icon, and with complete quality I am going to come to composition, save frame file, and here where it says Photoshop we click and choose JP sequence, we give it 2 or K, and here we save it in the folder we want, naming it Frame Girl. I'm going to put save. And render, we come back to this file import composition, and we are going to bring the east frame of the girl that we just saved, which by the way we are going to put it in the assets folder, and now we are going to put it right above the composition, and if you look, it is the same. There is no difference between this frame and the Chica layers composition. Okay, we make all the layers visible again, and here in the second 8, this frame of the girl we have to convert to 3D. Perfect now, so that the entire scene is not seen, and only this part of the photograph is seen. Look, there it no longer does the parallax effect, it looks like a static image, which is exactly what I want. Okay, well, this layer we press the F key for. If the follow-up mattes do not appear, then we are going to take advantage of the east solid that we have here, and we are going to make it the alpha mate of this perfect solid. Now it looks just like I wanted it to. Well, above this layer with it selected, we are going to right-click, New Adjustment Layer, and this adjustment layer, we are going to put the tritono effect here, and well, I am going to leave it as it comes by default to give it this vintage look to the image of the girl. Although I'm going to do a little animation here. To merge with the original color, I'm going to put more or less this part when the camera is zooming, and I'm going to mark a keyframe right here in this one because I am going to merge it with the original 90% so that it recovers a little of the original color. Well, something weird is going on here. Well, weird, isn't it? That we have to cut the frame of the girl right in this part, because if we don't, it won't let us see the composition we have here. So we select the frame layer here, in the second 8 edit split layer, and delete this part. Does it look perfect? Let's preview the whole animation. Come on, we're doing well. We're still here more or less this way. Before I start zooming in, let's do that kind of blink that we saw in the example. So we're going to create a new solid right click. solid. And this is going to be black or K. And here with the ellipse tool we double click and create this mask. Now we select this node, and with the pen tool we are going to do with Alt pressed, click on it, and in this one here the same Alt pressed and we click. But we have to put this mask into substrate mode. Now we double click on any of them and we are going to make it bigger there more or less. We display the mask options here and mark a keyframe in more path and 3 frames. Later, for example 1, 2 and 3, we select this point and move it towards the center. It doesn't have to be perfect either, but more or less around here, by this cross, which is where the center of the composition is. Over there, and this same one, we select this point and move it over there. And another 3 frames later, we select this keyframe, Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V and paste it. Well, this is going really fast. We select the 3 keyframes and with the Alt key pressed, we are going to pull the last one to the right. And this is adjusting the timing until we find a result that we like. What we do have to do is increase the draft so that it doesn't look so sharp. We order mask fader here and more or less, because we are going to put it around 100. And well, if we have to adjust some keyframe, although I think it's quite good there. East of the center with F9 we soften it, and this thing about the shores we leave it linear. We select all the layers and we come to the composition, assembly, and I'm going to do a preview to see if anything needs to be done. Yes, at the moment I see that here I have to add a grunge texture to the handmade composition and old photo that I have here in the assets. Do I come here to this composition and this texture, this grunge frame am I going to put? Well, more or less this way. With the S key, I'm going to lower the scale quite a bit. And I'm also going to convert it to 3D. I'm going to put here in the second 8. And right there, at that point, I'm going to convert it to 3D. Okay? Now I'm going to move it a little bit up. And well, what I want to do is adjust it here to the edges of the photograph. Over there, more or less over there. That's okay, I think it's perfect there. Now we have to put this texture in perfect multiply mode. And if we want, we can also put the effect called tint. And here in the black with the dropper, well, we can choose any color of these from the photo. Okay, I think it's perfect there. If we can clarify it a little more. Well, this also depends on the taste of each one. I'm going to leave it there. And another thing we have to do is activate motion blur on all these layers, all these. Well, the adjustment layer doesn't need it. And here in the Chica layers composition, because we are going to activate, and here we are going to put a couple of effects with right click. We are going to first put a black solid, and we are going to give it the effect called the circle. Here we change to stencil alpha, and in the invert circle box we activate it, and here we are going to increase the radius quite a bit, for example 930 there, and we are also going to put the ERDF between 300 and 400 there. Look at the before and after. Okay, well, with this we create a kind of vignette. Come another one. I accept more, right click, new adjustment layer, and this one we are going to put the one called exposure or exposure if you have After Effects in Spanish. And here we are going to increase the exposure, not much so as not to burn the image. We set it to 0.5 there, and we are also going to increase the gamma correction to 1.10. And this adjustment layer with the T key, we deploy the opacity and set it to 30%. And now with the Alt key and click on the clock, we're going to write wiggle 520 with this. What we're going to get is a kind of flicker for the duration of the composition. Look there at how it looks. The truth is that it looks quite cool. Okay, with right click, let's now create a solid. And this one, we are going to put an intermediate color between white and black. We put 50% or K here. And we are going to give it the effect called adding granules there. Here we are going to change to the final output. And here we can choose between all these presets. I'm going to put the usual one on him. I leave the size at 0.5 color. Monochrome and the animation at 0, so the noise is static. Now we have to put this layer in overlay mode. And see how cool it looks here. The noise. The truth is, it looks great. Another thing we can do is here, where it puts 8 bits per channel. With the Alt key pressed, we click and change to 16. With this, we are going to achieve much more depth of color, and we are also going to soften these hard and marked lines left by the gradients. Come on, let's do a preview to see what the animation looks like, and with this we would have finished the tutorial, although we could still continue putting some effects on it. But hey, if at any step you have got stuck or there is something you don't understand, write me the comments and we will solve it. What if you liked the tutorial? Leave me a good like so I know. See you in the next video.